So I think the one thing I've found over working with the Internet of Things over the last few years is, unlike most hacking demos, which is a virtual machine, the Internet of Things stuff is heavy. It seriously puts your back out after a while. And the other thing I really struggle with is you never got enough micro USB cables. Everything needs charged all the time. I'm going to talk about the Internet of Thingies, and I think that the reason why I've called it Thingies will come to light a little later during my presentation. I spend most of my life, I work with a team of ethical hackers, and I've been looking at all sorts of devices. There are a few points some of the previous speakers made. I think Kenny pointed out sort of apologizing for reverse engineering the crypto involving a smart card. I'm going to be doing some demos with stuff that maybe some of you in the room actually are responsible for. I'm sorry if that's the case. There are a couple of points I want to make that will be under Chatham House. I don't want these going out because they're currently going through disclosure right now, but I will tell you when that is, so please no tweeting about it, but I will make it very obvious. Where did it all start for me? It started with her. This is my friend Kayla. Who here's not seen my friend Kayla? Oh, wow. Well, you clearly don't watch the BBC or Charlie Brooker's Weekly Wipe. I'm shocked. She got quite a bit of exposure recently. She's an interactive kids doll. She sold very well at Christmas. The idea being is that she can talk to your child, and your child can interact with her. She has voice recognition, and then can respond in various ways depending on what the child says to it. That's kind of really sort of disguising the point. But me seeing child's toy, I am just a big kid at heart. I want to know, can I make her swear? Come on, it doesn't take me very much, does it? Come on, that's really what we want to be doing. So we spent a bit of time. We've got hold of one, now 4 of her, because we keep breaking her. But that's another story. That's one of the problems with the Internet of Things stuff. You often end up breaking it in the path to finding vulnerabilities. So I'm going to show you fundamentally what went wrong. So the first thing is she's not really that clever. She's actually just a Bluetooth headset. So just like the headset you used to wear on your ear, the one you talk to in your car, you pair your phone with it, and actually all the processing goes on the phone, unsurprisingly. Much easier. However, being a Bluetooth headset, you can actually pair her with your phone and make phone calls on her, which is a bit odd. The bit I'm debating at the moment is, obviously it's illegal to make phone calls when you're driving. I wonder what the police would say if they saw you driving on this. They'd probably arrest you for doing something else and said, what on earth are you doing? So, she's interesting. But anyway, I'll just show you sort of fundamentally how she works. So, we have my friend Kayla over here. She is the Bluetooth doll. All the processing goes on the phone over here. That's the phone running there. She talks too quietly, so there's no point in me trying to demo her live. There you go, she's gone offline anyway. So, there's lots of fun things you can do. First thing you need to do is turn her on. Unfortunately, you have to do that by taking her pants down. So, it all just gets worse. The voice recognition is actually done by the phone, so it's basically using functionality of Android to do voice recognition. If it recognizes one of about 3,000 key questions with a couple of keywords in, it'll look those up in the local database, which is running locally on the phone, and then respond with stock answers. She's also got a database of bad words, so if you swear at her, she will basically tell you off. Or if she gets a response from another source that involves a swear word, she also won't respond to you. So if she doesn't recognize those 3,000 odd potential questions, she'll then do a lookup. She'll go online and use the Wikipedia API and see if she can find a response there. So for example, to demonstrate, you could ask her about David Cameron and she'll go and read off the Wikipedia entry. Yeah, as you do. There are all sorts of vulnerabilities in the system. It's quite shocking, actually. It really was a 101. It was like going back to, Windows Server 2000, going back to the old days of vulnerabilities. So the first thing we discovered was that when the mobile app talks to the API, it doesn't use SSL. Really? Surely we know how to use SSL nowadays. So that meant we could very easily point it at a different API. Which was pretty poor, or we could just sit there and man the middle all the contents coming to and from and modify what was being said back to the child. But because the bad words database was being checked, if any bad words came back from that response, so for example, if you asked her about Jimmy Savile, the words paedophile were in the content, so she wouldn't then respond to you. So how do you get around that? Well, that's where things got quite easy, because when you pair with her, she uses a very lightweight Bluetooth implementation, which involves no pairing pin. So she's effectively will pair with anything you present to her that offers Bluetooth. She's promiscuous over Bluetooth. So you can simply offer her another Bluetooth device, and if you pick her up at the right moment, she'll switch to your device. So my device, which I've modified. In order to modify, it's quite straightforward. You'll need to root the device first, so you've got access to it. But it's your device, so you can root it. And then, matter of moments later, you can dig out the SQLite database that it runs, and you can edit any of the content on there. And because all the responses are coming locally, she trusts them, so the bad word database, which is over here, and actually quite funny to read, yeah, we won't go too much into all that. But anyway, so it was very straightforward to actually modify her. I think of this as fundamentally, for me, it's an evil brother attack, because I'm the older sibling. I've got access to a device. I can access my sibling's device, and I can modify the content. It's also, in my case, the bad dad attack, because my kids came into the office over Easter holidays, and I'd forgotten to clean down the database while they were playing with the doll. Oh, no. I know. But anyway, so there's so many flaws, it's ridiculous. But it goes worse than that, and this is an issue more moving away from the Internet of Things, but onto the devices we control them with, the mobile phones. And we find a lot of developers, when they're developing the applications to interface with particularly kids' toys or other IoT devices, give the applications far too much permission. And a couple of great examples there. So she can read external storage. So effectively, depending on the Android implementation, but the removable SD cards, so she can read extra content. Interesting. Okay, that's going to allow for a potential there. And then she can also make a sticky broadcast. Now, a sticky broadcast in the case of Android is typically more used for system events. So it's an alert that stays readable. So an example of that might be something like a low battery alert. So all the apps can go, okay, I can see that low battery alert. Maybe I'll write my state to storage, so if it loses power and drops out, I still got it. We put this to the vendor, and I think this is really indicative of many of the problems with the Internet of Things, is particularly in spaces I'm going to show you, is the vendors, well, these guys make dolls. So how do they deal with a security researcher? They haven't got a security department. They went and got a kid's doll and some Bluetooth modules and some processing and got an app developer and put them together and sold a few of them. So they don't know how to deal with this. So their response was, well, we're going to update the mobile app. Okay, so you could implement SSL and hopefully SSL certificate pinning, so you could enforce the integrity of that communication. But the implementation of Bluetooth is in her. So that's a product recall to fix her. So it can be quite a scary situation for a vendor a manufacturer who's just got into this space, discovering they can't actually fix the problem they've got out there through an over-the-air update. It may not work. So huge set of problems there. The next one I want to talk to is where we've been going with this. That's my colleague Dave, who's been doing a lot of work on this. We've discovered, actually, once you've dismantled her, you can make other toys do Kayla's. That's my friend Optimus Prime. The only challenge we've got with him at the moment is he talks with a girly voice. But, hey... We've also managed to implement a little camera, so she's now, he now, so whatever it is, transvestite, I don't know, now can actually sit there and spy on your room. One of the problems you've got with her is she sits there in the room. If a child forgets to turn it off, she listens to everything that's been said when she's on. Now, most of the time, she'll respond and start giving you a recipe for pasta, which is great, but she's sat there and she's listening, which is all quite hairy for me. I'm going to move on to more kids' toys. This is Hello Barbie. I've got a bit of a theme here. Hello Barbie. Now, I think this is a really interesting case of where a vendor's actually done some real thought into the security of their device. So the first thing, but Kayla listens all the time. Barbie, you have to press her spangly belt buckle. They thought about that, didn't they? In order to get her to listen. So we don't have this problem of her bugging us all the time. There's no mobile app. Basically, you use a mobile app in order to set her up so she talks to Wi-Fi. After that, all the processing is done on board and then in the cloud. That's all quite cool. I like that. The issue is that I'm concerned about, and I've spoken to the manufacturer, who are actually quite engaging about this, is they offered the facility for parents to be able to log into an account in the cloud and look at what their children have been saying to the doll. And of course, my view with home user, Joe Public, what password are they going to set? It's going to be the same as every other password they set for any other device, dog's name, football club. And if it isn't that easy, then it's bound to have been breached in another large breach somewhere. So we know people's passwords. So we really need to think carefully about that. There was a reference made by this previous speaker to Samsung TVs. And I saw the story. It was about terms of use. It was quite interesting. I got back late that night. I've got a Samsung telly, so I went straight up, I had a quick look, and there I discovered voice control. I hadn't bothered checking. Fortunately, that TV is not connected to the internet because I've got rubbish bandwidth where I live. But of course, that got me interested. This is a terms of use and sort of paperwork thing. So the first thing I did is took my TV into the office the next morning, all 46 inches of it, which was quite a struggle. I told you, the Internet of Things is heavy. And we got Wireshark onto it and started having a look. And those of you who, if you saw this story, it was actually us that published this. We did this research and published it into the public domain. I'm sure you've seen this, but unfortunately, when the TV does voice recognition, anything you say to it, once you hit a trigger, in this case it's Hi TV, it then starts listening to you and sends the contents of your speech off to a third-party nuance to do the decoding of voice into text so the TV can do something with it. And we discovered that both directions were completely unencrypted, which I thought was a bit shocking. Okay? Samsung replied, and they said, we take consumer privacy very seriously, and the latest products basically feature encryption. What an awesome excuse to go down to John Lewis and buy the latest Samsung TV. Get in! So I actually went to John Lewis in the end. The reason we went to John Lewis is both they and Costco offer a free 5-year guarantee. And I promise you, that's really useful when you start messing around with the firmware on your telly. Gave them a fair stab. We updated the firmware, brought it up to the very latest version. We discovered that whilst they changed the codec for the voice encoding, exactly the same problem was present. So it's still being sent on the latest TV that we got hold of, brand new. We asked the guys in John Lewis what the latest telly they had was, and it still went there in plain text. So we then updated the firmware again, surprisingly. I think it was update 1302. It might have been 1303. And that has now implemented encryption between the telly and nuance, which is great. So you could do voice-based web search. It took your WAV, effectively, your voice file, sent it off to Nuance, encrypted, nice bit of SSL, came back, nice bit of SSL. We checked it with Wireshark. It's all beautifully encrypted. Of course, if you're then doing, typically the thing you're saying to TV is probably something like a web search using embedded web browser. We then discovered that that search term was then sent to YouTube through your browser in plain text. So this is where things go badly wrong. I haven't since updated my TV. I think that's going to do it, but I want to demonstrate this later anyway. So does it matter? Well, as I think previous speaker noted, was that actually what's interesting here. So in the past, we went from terrestrial TV. We then started watching streaming stuff on our computers and our tablets. The TV manufacturers want us back. They want us watching in high-quality screens, streaming this time. But what can you do if you've got voice? Well, you can start listening, can't you? And you can start customizing the content you're presenting to the user. So that, I think, is quite interesting. There's going to be an interesting revenue stream for customized advertising through streaming services. I think that's brilliant. But can we protect it, please? Next place I want to go is to try and reverse the firmware on the TV without bricking it completely. In order to turn it into a room bug. But that's going to take a lot of time because the updates are signed, so there's a lot of work to be done there yet. Next place I want to go, and you would see the look on my wife's face when I go out the house with the bathroom scales. Some of this has been done already. So did anyone got a pair of these? Wi-Fi scales? They're really cool. They're absolutely amazing. You step onto them and it can identify you by weight. So as long as you don't put on more than 20 kilos overnight, it works out who you are. It can do body fat monitoring as well. The thing I have about this is it's all sent, like your Fitbit bracelet, it's sent to Fitbit services. And I think they send a little bit too much information, particularly things like SSID. Now, they encrypt that, which is fine. Obviously, there's potential to do man-in-the-middle attacks there. But what we've been looking at is something slightly different. We've been actually looking at dismantling this thing and trying to see if we can get it to do weird things using the display. Our eventual goal is to build a network implant into this that you can compromise over there. It's going to take a lot of time, but we've made progress. It's very often, this is when reading EEPROM gets quite helpful, and we've made some progress already. We managed to get it to say hi fatty when you step on, which would be quite fun. What it did show is once you start reading the EEPROM, you can actually see who manufactured it. And I'm sure that Fitbit aren't particularly pleased to know, but actually that's the company that make these for them. That's their body analysis scale. Surprisingly, the Fitbit isn't on there because they've clearly done an OEM job, haven't they? But that's all fun and games. I will say that I think Fitbit have done a reasonable job here, but I think there's still more they could do. We've got an internet dishwasher in the office as well. It didn't actually plumb it in for ages and ages because we just sat there playing with the network protocols. But it's basically down to simple Bluetooth and power over Ethernet. Which is looking absolutely, home plugs. And then, I'm not going to spoil the next presenter's slides, but I wanted to talk just quickly about something I found interesting. A friend of mine got a BMW i3. He's since got an i8, which is awesome, I might add. But one drunken night around his house, we were looking at the connected drive system. Now, connected drive, as I'm sure those of you with BMWs know, it gives you the ability to find your car in a car park, flash your headlights, that sort of sound your horn and stuff. Over a lot of wine, we sat down with his provisioned handset and started looking at my iPhone and thought, well, what's it going to take to connect my phone to your car? We sat down and had a bit of a think about it, and after tapping the wrong keys a lot through being too drunk, discovered all it took was username and password, which I discovered was the same username and password as he set for the Wiggle online bike store and his EasyJet account, which he gave me in order to log in to book myself a plane ticket with him once. So username and password was all it took to be able to provision the app on my phone, find his car, flash his headlights, unlock it, all sorts of crazy stuff. So we're trusting the user to set their own level of security. Along the line, we kind of forgot to deprovision my phone, so I can still sound his horn outside his house at midnight. You know, all great fun, hey? And then this is when things go a little bit nuts. I discovered, I feel a bit soiled as a result of this, the world of teledildonics. You should see why I call it the Internet of Thingies, right? You should also see my Amazon recommendations. They're utterly stuffed. I discovered the world of teledildonics. I was a bit surprised about all of this, that apparently people do have cyber sex. It's a little bit like Skype, I suppose, so you can control the other party's sex toy. Anyway, I'm not waving that around. And again, lots and lots of issues we found along the way. I mean, this is just one example, but the static Bluetooth pin of 4 zeros means you've got remote control over someone else's vibrator. It's just, all you've got to do is be close by. It's actually quite fun because it throws up a Bluetooth serial port. You can actually then drive this across the desk using a laptop. So we're having vibrator races at some point. And then I just want to briefly move on to a little more detail about some of the mobile devices. I think when we think about IoT, we think about the endpoint device, but I think we've got to be really careful about what we're controlling the IoT device with. Absolutely critical, because we're trusting the security of that relationship between the device and the control system to the user in the case of a mobile device. Here's an example. Some of you might remember I did a piece of work on the Tesco huddle this time last year, and we discovered that there's a flaw in the ROC chip, which is the CPU it uses. It's a fairly low-cost chip, and you can actually read data from it. It's really quite straightforward. It's a flaw with the bootloader mode. Usually, bootloader mode is there so you can unbrick a device. So if you bricked it, you can write new firmware to it. Fantastic. So you can write. What you shouldn't be able to do is read. Unfortunately, that was the problem with the huddle. I'll give Tesco their dues, actually. They've actually done a really good job on the huddle too. That's it. Much better device, much more secure, Intel-based, completely different security profile. And we quite like it. Unfortunately, they're not the only ones. This is another cheap entry-level tablet. This is my Argos My tablet, or believe it, a shiny pink Bush tablet. I don't know what that is all about. Very similar issues with the Aldi Life tab. I didn't like that. We brought it out of interest a little while back, and like the Tesco huddle, in order to get to bootloader mode, you'd usually, in the huddle, put a little, you'd hit the reset key, hold a particular key sequence down, it'll get it into bootloader mode. This one doesn't, okay? It doesn't have a reset port, so we spent ages trying to get it into bootloader mode. So first thing we did, we took the back off, removed the heat shielding, ran some intensive operations, got it to overheat, and that got it into bootloader mode for us. That took a while. You could also cheat. You could enable Android debug bridge, so you could root it effectively. That's kind of cheating, though, because you need the pin before you start. And then after about a week of work, we discovered all you had to do was hold down the volume up and volume down keys, and that got it into bootloader mode. I just want to show you how ridiculously easy this is to compromise. So, if you haven't seen this before, that is me connected to a pin-locked tablet. It's incredibly easy to exploit. All we need to know is the start of the user data partition, which I usually do on a huddle, so I can never remember it on here. I'm going to read the first 1,000 bytes and just pipe it out to a temporary directory, temporary file even. There you go. I'm now reading memory. It really is that easy. It's pin-locked. It's encrypted. I can pull the data back from it. If you want to have a bit of fun, I actually spent a bit of time. This is actually from a huddle that the BBC bought on eBay for me. It had been wiped. It had a factory reset applied. Unfortunately, the reset in the huddle doesn't work very well. It effectively deletes the equivalent of the file allocation table in DOS. So all the data's there. You can just carve it. Use it if you've ever played around with carving. It's an awesome way of recovering data from wiped systems. Run strings against it, and that's the poor guy's email address. Please don't write it down. If you want to have a bit more fun, you can actually go and pull his password back. That's all quite interesting. so we can get every file with the word password back. And it's that ridiculously easy to get data back from a device. Cheap tablets do not offer good security, in my experience. So what about securing them? So Android devices, set a PIN. One of the flaws I find in user operation is the PIN is often a bit on the short side. One of the problems I have with Android, it's great. I love the way it allows you to set a pattern, so it makes it easier to draw a long PIN. Two problems, that pattern persists, so it's much easier to shoulder surf someone on the tube on the way back from London. Not that I do that a lot or anything. And the second thing is there was a piece of research done by a German university a little while back that looked at common use. Patterns, everyone starts in the corners. Where'd you go next? Next adjacent number. So you massively reduce the entropy by choosing one of 4 corners rather than one of 10 digits. And as you start moving around the keypad, instead of having potential entropy of, say, 1 million different combinations, you're down to about 1,500. Not good enough, is it? I won't talk about that. It's a bit random. iPhone. Does anyone here currently have a 4-digit PIN? Who's feeling honest? I've got a 4-digit PIN? OK, all right. So there used to be some hardware flaws in the early version of iOS, and some of the hardware, in fact, sorry. So it was remarkably easy to force it, basically upload a, I'll try and remember the term, forgotten. But anyway, you used to be able to crack it in about 18 seconds. There's a rather cool bit of kit I've got. I'm not going to show the demo because we haven't got time. This will crack any iOS PIN, 4 digits, in 17 hours or less. Now, just have a little think about what you've got on your phone. You know, back in the days of desktop apps, when we logged in, we typed in the password, didn't we? We didn't store the password. But in order for apps to work, email to work on our mobile devices, we have to cache the password in the device. Now, what is the key to the encryption on all those mobile devices that's storing all those passwords? What is it? It's your PIN, fundamentally. It's a little bit more complex than that, but if you've got the PIN, you can decrypt the majority of the data that's stored on the phone. So what you're fundamentally saying is that you've got a 4-digit PIN, and therefore the key to all of your passwords is 4 digits. And I can crack that in a maximum of 17 hours with this device. Maybe think about 6 digits, or possibly 8. Okay? Everything's on there. I won't talk about that because it's rubbish and it's old, but this, I think, does illustrate a point. We talk about voicemail hacking in the press a lot at the moment. So here's the way to do it on a locked iPhone. You press that button, home button, hold down for 3 seconds, and unless you've explicitly turned off Siri or voice control, I can do just about anything I want to your phone. So you say voicemail, and it dials. It's a locked phone. My favorite demo is grab a friend's phone who hasn't switched off Siri, hold the home button while they're buying the beers in the pub, update Facebook. Whoa! You've got almost complete control of that device, so please. Siri, voice control, Google Voice, Cortana, turn it off. No one ever uses it. And if you really, really want to use it, you can actually set it so it's only enabled when you put the PIN in. So people can bypass the security of the devices that control the Internet of Things. So really the conclusion I just wanted to leave you with is, you know, there'll be a time when you get a call from a security researcher trying to do you a bit of a favor, trying to help you out, trying to flag a vulnerability to you. So please talk to them. They've got a point. They just want to go through an ethical disclosure process with you. They just want to work with you. They're not there grandstanding. They just want to help you. Okay? Talk to them, engage with them. They're going to offer you something useful, and they probably won't charge you a penny for the privilege of showing you some really cool stuff that's going on with your gear. So have a chat with them, engage them. Thank you. Any questions? Awesome idea. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The biggest challenge I think we'll have is getting the organizations that develop these things. I mean, you guys are the converted. You understand this stuff. But the guys who make Kayla make dolls, right? The guys who make kettles make kettles. They don't understand that actually what security is. You call them up, say, can I speak to your security department? They haven't got a clue what you're talking about. You know, they're a little business that's commissioned a development of something over in the Far East somewhere. They haven't got a clue what security is. So fantastic idea, and I think we should really strongly encourage that. But bear in mind, we need to reach out to every organization who's out there developing things that do stuff on the internet, whether they're thingies or dolls. No, they weren't interesting, so we didn't bother. No, sorry to be a bit flippant, but we do occasionally find apps that are well designed, You know, we find they've done all the right things, which is fantastic. Love to see that. Mobile devices, it's rare we get a device, you know, a consumer device that we can't do something silly with. Very rare indeed. I meant to bring along my Scalectric, because that's internet-enabled as well. Any more questions back there? Good, thank you.
Brilliant, thanks very much.